Hello, this is. Hope you're doing good out there, James here. I'm gonna make this. Try not to make this video long, but it's gonna be very interesting what I'm about to say. Um, you kind of feel some of you people who are like this guy. His name is Scott Gilbert, and you in the wake of this wokeism, what they call woke, wake, and you know all this diversity. This one particular group of people you just can't stand. I mean, they're on TV, they're on the football team, they're on the basketball team. If they're not doing that, they're doing something that that's just preposterous. In fact, you don't have too much of high regards for these people. You just wish, and they always gotta cry about race. And then when you try to be political, you feel like this guy. But I'm going to kind of interject why I said this,
Is it
and I got a
possible
solution for
to
it.
be racist against white people? And is it possible for a white person to bring up a thought provoking question about this? Now, this is all about the condemnation of Dilbert columnist Scott Adams. People are saying online he's a racist, and seems to be a competition of who can condemn him the fastest and the loudest. He said some things over the weekend that got him canceled faster than Kanye West, I would say, and that's saying something, in national newspapers, because he is the guy that drew and created Dilbert, which was nationally syndicated. It is no longer, because all of the newspapers came quickly rushing to their Twitter feeds to post statements like this. Here's from the LA Times, saying that the Times has decided to cease publication of Dilbert because of his racist comments on a YouTube live stream. Further, in the last 9 months, the Times has on 4 times printed a rerun of the comic when the Daily Dude strip did not meet our standards, so it will be immediately discontinued, they say. Here is a statement from his distributor. They say that this company is severing our relationship with Scott Adams. The process of this termination will extend to all areas of our business with him. They say, as a media company, we value free speech. They don't really, but they're saying they can say that if they want to. And we are proud to promote and share many different voices and perspectives, but we never support any comments rooted in discrimination or hate. So, okay, let's see what he really said, and then you judge for yourself, because this is mainstream media telling you that this is racist. You decide. You get a vote. I can show you a dozen more like this tweets. They're like, I told you so, he's racist, he says things that we don't like, but we have to cancel it. So, it started with a Rasmussen poll that was released just last week. The first poll asked Americans of any race to agree or disagree with this statement. It's okay to be white. 72% of Americans agree, 12% disagree. 69% of Democrats agree, 12% disagree. Then the statement, black people can be racist too. 79% of Americans agree, 12% disagree. 71% of Democrats agree, 19 disagree. Now, that poll is a bit problematic in and of itself, but then Rasmussen followed it up with this poll asking only black Americans, is it okay to be white? 53% agree, 26% disagree, 21% are not sure. So that's almost 50% saying we're not really sure if it's okay to be white, we think that it's not. The saying black people can be racist too. 76% agree, 27 disagree, and 8% not sure. So again, according to this poll, about 3/4 of black Americans have some kind of racial prejudice against white. Now, we all hold racial prejudices, whether they're positive, negative, conscious, or unconscious. It's ignorant of us to pretend that we don't. The poll may be trying to point that out in a positive way, saying everyone has racial biases. We should learn to treat people on the content of their character, maybe. In fact, the YouTube video that accompanies this poll, though, the demographer points out that this poll undermines the current racial orthodox, he says. He starts by talking about how this not sure number is significant. Listen.
17% of Americans are not sure, and that's a pretty big number for a question like this, which should be a simple question. question to answer. To me, that is the standout number. People berated or guilted so much that they won't anonymously submit a response to an IVR call or an online survey. Now, just for those wondering, if we took out the not sures, then 86% of Americans agree with that statement, a whopping 70% strongly. But I'm going to just keep the not sures in there for all these. But just keep in mind that the agreement number here is bigger than even these numbers indicate. Men agree slightly more than women, and younger adults slightly less than older ones. But here's race, and there is a signal here. White adults are much more likely to say it's okay to be white, which I think is very telling considering how much effort has been put into convincing white Americans that it isn't okay. Only 7% of white Americans say it isn't okay to be white.
Now that's interesting. I've never heard a demographer sort of say something like that there is a lot of media bias convincing white Americans that it's not okay to be white. I agree with him, but I'm not sure a demographer should say that. My belief is you can't combat racism with racism, right? That should be obvious to everyone. It's not to Twitter.
Right. I've never heard a demographer say that out loud either, but I think he's telling the truth about it, right?
Yeah.
We're all aware of it, and in the same way that we're all aware of these biases, why shouldn't he mention that, though?
Right. In fact, there is sort of a religious fervor for making white people ashamed of themselves. Here is a video I found from the New York Times telling white people exactly why they should have guilt, and that they cannot refute their white privilege. Watch.
I think that impulse, that kind of colorblindness impulse, comes mostly from white people. Like, I've never heard, I don't know. I'm sure it comes from all people of all kinds, but I've heard it most from white people who are saying, like, let's do this as a way of getting past this racism thing. And I think in part it comes from a sense of shame and guilt about what racism has done, and kind of how racism was built by white people.
I don't want to be ashamed of being, and plus I'm a male. It's like every group out there can be pissed off at me because I'm white and a male. And that's a weird kind of burden that some people do feel, and I certainly feel it sometimes from people that I'm privileged, I get stuff that other people don't get.
I think we're all implicated in a racist system, and I play my part in it as a white person. So I do have individual responsibility and accountability. I mean, I'm part of the system, and I do things that both perpetuate it, and I try to certainly do things that challenge it.
I realize I've never said anything. When I've heard racist jokes, when I've heard racist comments, I've never said anything. I've never spoken up and said, hey, that's racist. Not once.
In my mind, I'm not involved in any conflict that involves race. I've only been the beneficiary of it. So, to talk about it is I don't think I would sound very wise.
Being white means that I have the privilege to think that I'm not affected by racism. Or that I don't even have a race, because I have all these other things, like a gender and a sexual orientation, and those are pretty neat, so I don't have a race. But I do, and I'm white.
It's like a confessional.
It's crazy.
I mean, this goes on for 5 minutes. I only clipped out the last part, and I was like, what the hell am I watching? Now, this is a few years old, but this was an effort by the New York Times to tell people that they need to confront their white privilege. And it was, like a confessional. Like, go into this booth, whip yourself 30 times, and then you're going to do it again tomorrow because of this unconscious bias. There is irrefutably an effort in our culture to even the score with white people, so to speak. For more about this, I want to recommend the book by Douglas Murray, War on the West. I think he does a fantastic job of breaking this down. Now, I could continue to break down the survey because I have a social science background, but I won't. On to what Scott Adams actually said. He said, in response to this survey, he said that people who answered that it is not okay to be white are a hate group, and that white Americans should distance themselves from people who don't like white people. Is that racist? Now, think that through for a bit.
So let's just clarify that point. Let's just enunciate that point.
Okay.
So in this poll, the people that said it's not okay to be white, that's hateful according to Scott Adams. And therefore, white people then should stay away from those people because that's hate.
Let's switch the racists for a second.
Okay.
If white people overwhelmingly answered that it's not okay to be black, and black people said, well, then I want to stay away from those white people who feel that way, would that be hateful?
I don't think so. It'd be a call to be safe, right?
Or a call to just live a more comfortable life?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, and say,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I don't want to go into that particular neighborhood because, well, maybe there's a history of things happening to people that wander into neighborhoods where they're not welcome.
Maybe it's an inflammatory way to say this, but is it something that is racist and hateful? Philip and David, Foster brothers, do you want to say anything about this? Is that a hateful thing to say?
I don't feel like it is, no.
Okay. Now, in an interview with Hotep Jesus on his YouTube channel, Scott Adams explained it this way.
And I think some of the context got lost, is that if you're not in a constitutional legal sense and you're not talking to an individual, then for career maximization or life maximization, you might want to avoid people you think have a bad opinion of you.
Okay. So he goes on to say that when a black family becomes affluent, they move out of black neighborhoods and into neighborhoods with lower crime rates and, more social programs. And those neighborhoods tend to be white. Or he mentions now a lot of those neighborhoods tend to be Asian or Indian. And he says, do we begrudge them that as a racist endeavor, that you want to go where people have a more favorable opinion of you? Is that racism? Now, these are valid questions. He may have raised them in a trolling kind of way, but they are still worth discussing. Now, why did he do this? He answers that question. In his answer, he says the F word, so I'm giving you fair warning because I hear from those of you who watch with your children. I'm going to play what he says, and he says the F word once. So, you've been warned. Go ahead.
To shake the box. So here's the answer to your original question. Why the fuck did I do this? Because the box was broken and somebody needed to shake it. And we need to be able to actually break through the bubble and actually have the conversation. And if what that causes is me to get canceled, I had a good run. If the proposition is you get to continue doing your cartoon or you get free speech in a useful way, like I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was useful.
Okay, but is this useful, this conversation, or is it just giving people the opportunity to jump in and virtue signal and call someone a racist, thereby proclaiming to the world that they're not a racist? Well, it does seem to be a little bit of that, and he addresses that.
Most of the worst responses I got were from white people signaling. Yeah, I call them the dopamine gooners. It's like they're just tweeting at me, you're racist, over and over again, and they're just enjoying themselves in some weird way. It doesn't feel like it's about me. It's like I'm just the headlines they can goon to. But the weirdest thing was how black men responded to this. White men went immediately to racist, Nazi, and you couldn't talk them off that ledge. The black men pretty much came in with something kind of similar to your first reaction, which is, there's something we don't know about this. They were smelling, this doesn't smell right. Like, there's something about this, there's some context missing. And so, mostly, the response I got from black men was, I'm interested in this topic. I'm actually interested in the topic.
Okay.
And
That's interesting.
So
That we can have this kind of discussion, right? Because you just don't get this on Twitter. I mean, you don't get this deep, nuanced discussion about it and understanding it. Maybe his initial tweet or whatever was inelegant, and it certainly maybe was trolling, I guess. And he says he wished he would have been more nuanced about it and explained it a little bit more differently.
In my personal journey, I remember so many times being, I had an idea of what I thought, and I got punched in the face a couple times with information that I wasn't expecting, still throwing out my view against something that somebody had posted like that, But then once I started like listening and looking, I was like, wait a minute, that what I'm thinking doesn't make sense. So I feel like, like we have to have these conversations, and sometimes like what Matt Walsh was just going through like last week, where people were saying he was too mean with Dylan Mulvaney or whatever. I feel like sometimes you have to kind of put it out there in that way because it gets people charged up and it gets everybody reacting, and some people will come out the other end actually looking into the information. So, you might get 100,000 people that go into it, maybe 10,000 come out with more information and change, and then that's more people you have pushing that out. So it's like, I feel like I agree with him. I feel like it has to happen. And I've learned through listening to Natalie to try to be a little bit more diplomatic with my delivery of things, which I appreciate. So I've had better conversations doing that, recently. So I do like what he's saying about the nuance. I feel like he could have been a little bit different with how he did it, but I feel like it still has to happen.
Right. And I think this is the crux of the conversation that we are not supposed to have, which is why it feels good to just watch the mainstream media cancel him, because we should not be asking the question, is it okay that we all have shared racial biases and prejudices, or are we supposed to just jump on whiteness as bad? Elon Musk jumped into this conversation on Twitter. He agreed that the new racism is against white and Asian people. He was responding to something about, this conflict, and he said the media is in fact racist. And then he followed up. He said, for a very long time, U.S. media was racist against non-white people. Now they are racist against whites and Asians. Same thing happened with elite colleges and high schools in America. Maybe they can just all try not being racist. Now, Hotep Jesus, the host of that YouTube show, he makes a point that black people may have biases against white people bred into them, and that is more intense at different socioeconomic levels, which is a valid point, and we'll put a pin on that and discuss it another time. But Adam said he was going to retire anyway. He's 65. He doesn't really care about the cancel culture. He's going to work on his locals channel, and he may go into politics. But he is interested in having a productive race discussion, and I think in this 90-minute YouTube video, which I'm going to link you to in the show notes, they accomplished that. I think it is actually a really good conversation about race that I encourage you to watch. And I found myself agreeing with the both of them quite a lot. He has some really nuanced ideas about reparations. For instance, the host says, I think reparations, we could start that discussion by saying, fine, reparations if Democrats pay. And then we see what happens, which is really interesting.
Right.
He's like, because then Republicans will be like, sure, do it. And Democrats then have to put up or shut up. And he also has some interesting ideas about reparations as tax incentives for black entrepreneurs. And I like it. And I think those things should be heard. I can see where it could go right or wrong, but it's a productive conversation. But I really think the mainstream media wants you to look another way. And I don't think we can look away from the fact that mainstream culture wants you to replace one racism with another. They want white people to take lashes for racism of their past in a way that no other culture with sins of the past has had to do. And I think they do it to keep black voters in a victim mentality and endear them to the Democratic Party, which this host points out is not really congruent to black.
I'm gonna come back with that question. What she said.
The most important people in my life are my wife and daughter, hands down.
Wherever too many people live squeezed in one room or too many families live jammed together,
Let her tell you.
In 1945, 38-year-old J.D. Shelley and his wife Ethel purchased a modest two-story brick home on Labadie Avenue in north central St. Louis. What they didn't realize is that, by law, they technically weren't allowed to buy that house, even though the previous owner willingly sold it to them, even though they paid the asking price, because J.D. and his wife Ethel and each of their 6 children were all black. What followed would be known as one of the most significant decisions in the history of the United States Supreme Court, but you've probably never heard of it. And despite what should have been seen as a sweeping condemnation of racial segregation in housing, that segregation continued through overt fear-mongering of white residents, white flight, a practice known as block busting, as well as through overt and covert government actions meant to ensure that white neighborhoods remained white and undesirables were pushed into overcrowded, underfunded industrial
neighborhoods in virtually every metropolitan area in the United States. Roll the intro. Before we get into the story of J.D. and Ethel Shelley and how our government has enforced racial segregation in every city in America, I want to thank my partner on today's video, Warby Parker. I got my at-home try-on kit. If you don't know, you can order 5 pairs of glasses for free from Warby Parker, so you can try on the frames and see which look best on you before you buy. The at-home try-on kit ships free and includes a prepaid shipping label. I love Warby Parker. I've been using them for years. When I went to law school in Boston, I would go to the Warby Parker store in the Peru and just try on frames because I was exhausted and sad mostly thanks to law school, and I found it really calming to try on new identities and see what my life would be like. And when I finally ordered my glasses, I could also go there and get them adjusted to fit my stupid ears because one is higher than the other, but don't look at my ears. Ew. Yes, Warby Parker has physical stores, and yes, you can go in and they'll adjust your Warby Parker glasses. It's great. So you could say that Warby Parker was my happy place in law school. And they don't just offer eyeglasses. You can also get eye exams, sunglasses, and contacts online or in stores. Glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses. So lately I've been really into masculine frames, so let me try on some of these for you. I've been trying some different black frames with varying degrees of success. Yeah. One way was by adding what are called restrictive covenants to their deeds when building and selling houses. You learn about restrictive covenants in the first year of your property law class in law school. They are rules that the owner of a property can impose on subsequent owners. Sometimes they're pretty innocuous, like no subsequent owners of this property can plant apple trees anywhere on said property. Those are usually perfectly legal. But racists got clever at the beginning of the 20th century and started adding restrictive covenants to their deeds that said things like, and I quote, "The real property above described or any portion thereof shall never be occupied, used, or resided on by any person not of the white or Caucasian race, except in the capacity of a servant or domestic employed thereon as such by a white Caucasian owner, tenant, or occupant." Through the use of these restrictive covenants, owners were able to ensure that subsequent buyers of their property would always be white. The pesky problem with this kind of language in a deed of sale is that it's a private contract between the buyer and the seller. So if the seller wants to sell to a black person and they find a black person willing to buy, even if there's a race-based restrictive covenant, there's nothing that can stop them. A neighbor can't come in and try to enforce the private contract because they're not a party to the contract. So increasingly, entire neighborhoods would come together and enter into private contracts saying that they would never ever sell their houses to black people. That way, all the neighbors who signed on to the contract then had the right to sue if any other neighbor turned around and sold their home to a black person. And they would create the contracts to run with the land, as they say in the biz, meaning that it was binding to the property and to subsequent owners of the property, meaning these racially restrictive agreements were then taken on by subsequent buyers of the same property. This is also the reason why homeowners associations were created, to restrict blacks from entire subdivisions. So there's a fun fact to bring up at your racist Great Aunts barbecue next week. And this practice was pervasive in virtually every major city and suburb in the United States for the first half of the 20th century. And these restrictive covenants were upheld again and again by courts across the country as perfectly constitutional because they were private agreements between private parties, not state action against a certain race. And despite the fact that it was acknowledged that government-sanctioned and enforced housing restrictions would be unconstitutional, the government continued to restrict access to housing for black Americans, especially via the FHA. The Federal Housing Administration was created in 1934 in response to the Great Depression to allow the U.S. government to help fund the purchase of housing, thus creating desperately needed construction jobs and helping people who had been flattened by the Depression get back on their feet and purchase property. The way the FHA worked is by using government funds to ensure private bank mortgages that covered 80% of purchase prices and had terms of 20 years. Because the FHA is the one insuring the mortgage on the house, the FHA then insisted on doing its own appraisal of the property to make sure that the loan had a low risk of default. That's what insurers do. They see whether the risk is high or low, and they prefer to insure lower risk things because then they get to keep their money. And what was in the handbooks and manuals for all FHA insurance appraisal agents? A whites-only restriction. Basically, the FHA, as well as other mortgage insurers, had determined that black homebuyers were too risky. What's more, they determined that even even if the home buyer was white, if the home was located near black neighborhoods or in neighborhoods where black people also resided, it was too risky to insure the mortgage, making the homes impossible to buy, especially for black buyers. Because if the FHA wouldn't insure the mortgage, banks usually wouldn't lend the money to buy the home. And while it's no longer the policy of the FHA to not insure black home buyers, the idea that black home owners and black neighborhoods are inherently poorly kept is an idea that persists to this day. The idea that when black people move in, the neighborhood deteriorates because of some, shortcoming on the part of black people. But let's take a damn step back, okay? Because as with all things, this is a myth that was created by racism and is actually the fault of white supremacy. Let's use St. Louis as an example because that's where our story about the Shelleys takes place. At the beginning of the 1900s, St. Louis city planners deliberately zoned for single-family only homes in white neighborhoods with restrictive covenants, guaranteeing that those neighborhoods would remain intact and whites only. In neighborhoods with predominantly black populations and land near those neighborhoods, they zoned for multifamily homes and industrial development, including polluting industry. Not only that, but the commission permitted taverns, liquor stores, nightclubs, and houses of prostitution to open in African American neighborhoods, but prohibited them in white neighborhoods. They also allowed for the subdivision of properties located in black neighborhoods, but not in white neighborhoods. And in this atmosphere, with black would-be homeowners completely barred from purchasing most homes, black homeowners were pushed into industrial-zoned, polluted locations littered with strip malls and liquor stores. And because they couldn't obtain FHA-insured loans to buy the few homes available to them, they often had to rent out rooms or live together with family members and overcrowd what little housing was available to them. And when those houses inevitably began to break down from overuse, they didn't have the funds to repair the houses, leading to the perception that black people degrade the value of neighborhoods, when in fact they were simply surviving in the squalor that white supremacy made for them. It was in this reality that the Shelley family attempted to find a home to purchase in St. Louis. They worked with a real estate agent who was recommended to them by their pastor, and he found them a house in a white neighborhood where the seller was willing to sell to them as a black family. They bought the house and moved in. However, unbeknownst to the Shelleys, in 1911, a restrictive covenant was placed on the house between the surrounding houses, and it was still attached to their home. It said, and I quote, "Hereafter, no part of said property or any portion thereof shall be, for said term of 50 years, occupied by any person not of the Caucasian race, it being intended hereby to restrict the use of said property for said period of time against the occupancy as owners or tenants of any portion of said property for resident or other purpose by people of the Negro or Mongolian race." End quote. And then Lewis Kramer, a homeowner whose property was part of the restrictive covenant, sued the Shelleys to evict them from their home and get the court to declare the sale of the home to the Shelleys as a breach of the legally binding restrictive covenant. The Missouri court sided with Kramer, saying that the agreement was between private parties, so it was enforceable. The case wound its way up to the Supreme Court, which was faced with the question, are race-based restrictive covenants constitutional, and can they be enforced by a court of law? The court held that while the race-based restrictive covenants may not necessarily be unconstitutional, because the Constitution applies to state actors, and this was a private agreement between private individuals, so okay, not necessarily unconstitutional. However, they are not legally enforceable by state courts, because by enforcing the covenants, the state courts were taking government or state action to enforce a racially restrictive covenant, and that is unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, because then it becomes state action when the court enforces it. So the practical effect of this ruling was to make any existing and future racially restrictive covenants unenforceable in court. You can write them, and you can even abide by them privately, but a court isn't going to step in and enforce them if someone subsequently breaks the covenant and sells to a black person. Despite how divided the country was on this issue, this was a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. Kind of. It was a 6-0 vote. Yes, there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and there were in 1948 when this case was decided. But 3 of those 9 justices, 1/3 of them, had to recuse themselves because they lived on property subject to a race-based restrictive covenant. You see, this is back when Supreme Court justices would recuse themselves if they or their families were even tangentially related to the case at hand, such that they could be biased in one way or another, but we've done away with that silly formality. Thanks, Clarence. While this case played out in court, the Shelleys remained in their home at 4600 Labadie Avenue in St. Louis. On the day of the ruling, J.D. Shelley recounts, and I apologize, pretend that this is in a nice southern accent. He said, "When I got home that evening, my wife was sitting on the front porch reading the paper that says we won the case. That night the photographer come and we was sitting on the couch with the kids betwixt us and some on the floor, and they had it in the newspaper. We lived in that house on Labadee for maybe 10 years. I kept on working in construction long as I could, and my kids and their kids were all working too. Right now I got 5 great-great-grandchildren. Ethel passed on September 15th, 1984. We was married 60 years, and when we had our anniversary, they had a big ceremony over to the church. The way I see it, it was a good thing that we done this case. We was the first ones to live where they said colored couldn't live." 4600 Labadee Avenue is still a private residence in St. Louis, though it's been dubbed a historical landmark, and the Google Street View shows a little plaque out front commemorating the home's role in one of the most important Supreme Court cases in the 20th century. And with that, 60 years of segregated housing and 200 years of slavery and racism were done away with, and everyone lived in racially integrated neighborhoods forever after. The end. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, you guys. Like I said, racists can't be dissuaded that easily. The FHA, remember, the government agency that insures mortgages but wouldn't insure mortgages for black people or in neighborhoods where black people live? Yeah, they were like, listen, that decision, it's about restrictive covenants and that doesn't even apply to us, okay? I don't even know what you're talking about. They willfully ignored the ruling, saying that it wasn't their business if people wanted to continue and use racially restrictive covenants on the houses they were insuring mortgages for. That was private business between private individuals, and their policy not to insure mortgages for blacks or in black neighborhoods was just based on pure facts and figures, okay? When blacks move into a neighborhood, the value's immediately depreciated, and they couldn't risk that. It was just bad business. Of course, we discussed this already. This perception was a product of white supremacy, and the FHA or any other insurance or mortgage company never produced actual evidence that when black people move into a neighborhood, the prices depreciated. It was just commonly understood. In actuality, often when a black person bought a house in a white neighborhood, they were charged more than a white person would have been for the same house because racism, making the property values of the surrounding houses go up because of how much that black person was willing to pay. Like, this idea that property values nosedived when blacks moved in was a complete fabrication, but it was strong. So strong that it took 20 more years before the FHA was forced to end its racial restrictions on insurance when Congress passed the Fair Housing Act of 1968, prohibiting discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race. Despite all of this, the racially restrictive zoning leading to race-based restrictive covenants and the FHA's refusal to insure houses purchased by black buyers or in black neighborhoods, despite all of that, the immediate aftermath of the Shelley versus Kramer decision was that after 1948, black homeowners did, in fact, begin moving into white neighborhoods where restrictive covenants once barred them. And private real estate agents saw this as an opportunity. They began practicing what was known as block busting. If a black family moved into or near a white neighborhood, the real estate agents would hand out pamphlets and post billboards warning of declining property values and encroaching black residents taking over their safe, beautiful neighborhoods. In some cases, these predatory real estate agents would hire black women to push babies in prams down the streets of white neighborhoods or pay black men to roll down the streets of white neighborhoods blasting music out of their car speakers. The real estate agents would then come through and warn of deflating property values and black encroachment, and this led to white panic, and white people would then sell their homes to these real estate agents at deflated prices, who would then turn around and sell the houses back to black buyers at inflated prices, pocketing the difference. This led in part to the massive white flight to the suburbs in the 50s and 60s, and to the further segregation of cities. This, combined with the types of resources that just come when property values are higher, because you got higher property taxes, there's more money for schools and infrastructure, etc., and gentrification and reinforcement of racist stereotypes, and then later the racially disparate impact of the 2008 housing crisis, which was led by subprime mortgage loans that were disproportionately targeted at black home buyers. This has all continued to enforce what people call de facto segregation, or segregation that just happens by circumstance, when in reality the basis of the segregation was created and enforced not by de facto segregation, but by de jure segregation, segregation enforced by law, that can still be seen and felt in virtually every metropolitan area in the United States today. St. Louis once again paints a clear picture of this phenomenon. In 1945, when the Shelleys purchased 4600 Labadee Avenue, it was in an area that had a whites-only restrictive covenant, a historically white neighborhood. Once they moved in and won their case, the race-based restrictive covenants in the neighborhood were no longer enforceable. Property values artificially decreased due to this fear of blacks moving into a neighborhood, and eventually the neighborhood was entirely black, as whites fled to the suburbs or south to other parts of the city. Today, St. Louis is famously segregated by what's known as the Del Mar Divide, with blacks predominantly residing north of Del Mar Boulevard and whites residing, along with most of the wealth and access to resources like parks, museums, and zoos, south of Del Mar Boulevard. North of Del Mar Boulevard, the racial makeup of St. Louis is 99% black. South of Del Mar Boulevard is 70% white. North of Del Mar Boulevard, the average home value is $78,000. South of Del Mar, the average home value is $310,000. In the north, the percentage of people with a bachelor's degree is 5%, and in the south, it's 67%. As author Richard Rothstein says in his book, The Color of Law, which is an obligatory read for all Americans, go buy it, by failing to recognize that we now live with the severe, enduring effects of de jure segregation, we avoid confronting our constitutional obligation to reverse it. Desegregation is not just a desirable policy, it is a constitutional as well as moral obligation that we are required to fulfill. Let bygones be bygones is not a legitimate approach if we wish to call ourselves a constitutional democracy. In the end, however, we have lulled ourselves into the false notion that we live in a society that just happens to be segregated by coincidence or personal choice. And recent Supreme Court decisions reinforce this notion, making it a legal impossibility for anyone to seek recourse for the wrongs imposed upon them for generations by systematic, state-sanctioned, and state-enforced racial segregation in every city in America. To learn more, check out Richard Rothstein's book, The Color of Law. Thank you again to my partner on today.
Whoa, 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 whoa. She dropped the bomb. She dropped the bomb. Woo! But guess what? To the people who are anti-black, anti-white, who are white, who don't, they don't want to feel guilty, and they don't want to be accused of being racist, and they don't want to. They want to feel they want to, they can, crack jokes and be politically correct against black people and have a love-hate relationship, and you still want that relationship. Well, I got some places where it's more you than it is black people. In fact, I'm going to let you know, I just saw a video said the whitest states top 10 in America. So if you're white, you don't have to feel guilty no more. You don't have to feel like you're obligated. If you don't like diversity, you don't want to be politically being chose or whatever, and you scared of black people and gonna rob you and move in your neighborhood and do all these things like you see on TV. Well, I got the place for you, get some states for you where you can move to, and you don't have to worry about seeing nobody that look black. So I'm going to point these states out to you. These are for my in the closet racist people who, along with the wrong yet direct. Heck, you can have Klan rallies out there. Because who's going to say something? Who's going to go out there? And for some of you who don't like black people, like the next group called White Hispanics, I got a video for you. You can go out there too. Watch this.
America the beautiful, home of the brave. The United States of America is a diverse nation, home to people from all walks of life and various ethnic backgrounds.
Exactly.
However, some states have a higher percentage of white population than others. Today, we're going to explore the top 10 states with the highest white population percentage in America. We'll delve into the history and culture of these states and learn more about the people who call them home. So sit back, relax, and join us as we take a closer look at the diversity of America. Number 10, Wyoming. Wyoming has a 79.5% white population. Wyoming is a western state known for its wide open spaces, natural beauty, and rugged terrain. It is a popular destination for outdoor enthusiasts, particularly those interested in hunting and fishing. The majority of Wyoming's population is white, with many of its residents being of German, Irish, and English ancestry. Number 9, South Dakota. South Dakota has an 81.6% white population. South Dakota is a state located in the northern part of the Great Plains region. It is known for its Mount Rushmore monument, as well as its beautiful prairies and badlands. The majority of South Dakota's population is white, with many of its residents being of German, Norwegian, and Irish ancestry. Number 8, Kentucky. Kentucky is the 8th highest state with a white population of 82.7%. Kentucky is a southern state known for its horse racing, bourbon, and southern hospitality. The majority of Kentucky's population is white, with many of its residents being of German, Irish, English, and Scottish ancestry. Number 7, North Dakota. North Dakota has a 83.5% white population. North Dakota is another Midwestern state that has a high percentage of white population. It is known for its wide open spaces, oil fields, and friendly people. The majority of North Dakota's population is white, with many of its residents being of German, Norwegian, and Irish ancestry. Number 6, Iowa.
Look at that.
Iowa is the 6th highest white population state with an 84.8% white population. Iowa is a state located in the Midwest region of the country. It is known for its vast fields of corn and soybeans, as well as its friendly people and strong sense of community. The majority of Iowa's population is white, with many of its residents being of German, Irish, and English ancestry.
Wow.
Number 5, Montana. Montana has an 86.8% white population. Montana is a western state known for its rugged terrain, wide open spaces, and natural beauty. It is a popular destination for outdoor enthusiasts and adventure seekers. The majority of Montana's population is white, with many of its residents being of German, Norwegian, and Irish ancestry. Number 4, New Hampshire. New Hampshire has a 90.9% white population. New Hampshire is a small state located in the northeastern part of the country. It is known for its beautiful lakes, mountains, and forests. The majority of New Hampshire's population is white, with many of its residents being of English, Irish, French, and German ancestry. Number 3, West Virginia. West Virginia is the state with the 3rd highest white population, with 92.3% of the people being white. West Virginia is a state located in the Appalachian Mountains region of the country. It has a long history of coal mining and other industrial activities. The majority of West Virginia's population is white, with many of its residents being of English, Irish, Scottish, and German ancestry. Number 2, Vermont. Vermont has a 93.6% white population. Vermont is another northeastern state that has a high percentage of white population. It is known for its beautiful fall foliage and scenic mountain views. Vermont has a predominantly rural population, with many of its residents being of English, Irish, French, and German ancestry. And the number 1 state with the highest white population goes to, drum roll please, yep, you got it, Maine. Maine has a 93.7% white population. Maine tops the list as the state with the highest percentage of white population in America. It has a long history of being predominantly white, with many of its residents being of English, Irish, Scottish, and French ancestry. Maine is known for its beautiful coastline and rugged wilderness, making it a popular destination for tourists. In conclusion, these top 10 states with the highest white population percentage in America offer a glimpse into the diversity of the country. While the majority of their populations may be white, these states are also home to people from various racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds. Understanding and appreciating this diversity is key to building strong, inclusive communities across the nation. We hope you learned something new about these states and the diversity that exists within them. We encourage you to continue exploring the different cultures and backgrounds that
So to my in the closet people like Scott, there you go. You ain't got to be around a lot of black people, right? That's the solution. I mean, look how many states that it was. Counties and states. I'm pretty sure you're going to find somebody will stay in agreement. And if there are some blacks in the county, you got about 55 counties in those states that are predominantly white. And you don't have to, and your kids don't have to mix in with blood with black and this urban and stuff like that and thing. So, you don't have, and then you can, you can meet some group of people up there that might have some skinhead and white nationalist belief. Yeah, it's just, hey, ain't nobody up there. You don't have to worry about offending nobody. I mean, what the heck? You allowed to be who you are. You don't want to be around this. You got them states to go to. You don't have to apologize for being white no more. You got your own place. And then for the black people, I don't know about going up there because if you want to keep going through the Karen situations in the neighborhoods and going through bias and prejudice, I think you should stay out of those white towns, some of the white states. That's my opinion. Like I said, come back towards the majority of mixed population. That's why I say that. Let them have it. And that's why I say let it be at peace. We don't have to do that. Hell, Ron DeSantis will probably help you out. That's what he's trying to cater to anyway. And people like him with that mindset.
That lens. But I need you guys, as a
Hold on. Shout out to her video. But yeah, you don't have to be prejudiced. You can still be segregated. No problem. You're not being racist.
Right. Calling up all the Latinos, the Cubans, Hispanics, all the people.
And you guys can move up there too.
Would take for Ron DeSantis. I mean, like everything that is going on in Florida. He said it happened when you buy into white supremacists. You
hear from my man Dixon.
Yourself up and down. And as you all can see, they already effed up, right? And they are being anti-black, right? And he is calling all of them out. I mean, you all saw what was going on, how they are being anti-black, and you all went ahead, voted for them, and right now, they already shot you all in the leg and in the hair, and you all are calling black people. The same people that you are anti-black, I mean, you are calling them to come help you out, fight the fight. I mean, how are they supposed to fight your fight? It is your problem, right? So go sort it out. You all said that it is in your culture to be, not to protest, not to do anything, not to speak up. Then why are you all calling black people to come speak up? I mean, you see this video is
there you
everything
go.
you
Exactly.
want to see today.
Exactly.
And I want to send a very big shout out to Dixon.
There you go. In fact, you can move to them states up there.
The truth and nothing but the truth.
You want to get away from black people too? You go to them states. Why it just shows you.
And he actually said these are the percentage of people that voted for him. And you all are suffering from what you all did, and you all are busy calling black people. What are black people supposed to do for you? You know what? Step into the screen. I am going to roll the screen. We'll come back to talk about it, and I absolutely want to read all your comments. Let me know what you all think in the comment section. And straight up, I am rolling there.
What happens when you buy into white supremacy? I always said it, and I'll say it again. You fuck yourself. Look at the fucking state of Florida. The state of Florida is becoming a fucking sundown town. You're not a straight white Christian male. And he's going for them too. Everybody's civil liberties and constitutional rights are being affected. Let me tell you something. You guys always say it's gerrymandering and all that shit why I got elected. No. 68% of Cubans voted for DeSantis. 58% of Puerto Ricans. 53% of all Latinos voted for DeSantis. God knows how many white, ignorant motherfuckers. You buy into white supremacy. You don't care. It's not your problem. You're a fucking idiot. It is your fucking problem. White supremacy affects everybody. Not just black people, not just brown people, it's indigenous people. Everybody. Now you elected a fucking fascist in the state of Florida. Now you gotta deal with your civil liberties being violated. Now you gotta deal with businesses, industries being shut down because they can't find any fucking labor. And now, magically, Latinos give a fuck. Latinos didn't give a fuck when he was anti-black with his anti-woke policy. You didn't give a fuck. Now that it's anti-immigration, now you give a fuck. Well, guess what? You got what you fucking voted for.
He said
you
it.
fucking idiots. Not all Cubans, Dixon. Not all Puerto Ricans, Dixon. Not all white people, Dixon. I know, not all, but too fucking many. The majority of your people voted for fascism. The majority of your people voted for white supremacy. That's the fucking problem. You don't care. You haven't done anything to address it. Address the fucking problem. Hold your people accountable. I'm half Cuban. I know. It's in my own fucking family. Some of them. I know what it's like in the fucking Cuban community. I've seen it in my own fucking eyes. The other half is white. God knows the white supremacy and ignorance racially that operates in my white community. Hold your people accountable so that you don't have have this kind of
Cuban.
fucking bullshit. I'm not saying Democrats aren't racist, but fuck, man, they're not going to these extreme to normalize white supremacy and to normalize fascism, pass legislation that is directly anti-immigrant, anti-gay, anti-black, and coming for every other liberty that you have. My God, people are fucking ignorant. I've always told you people, white supremacy hurts everybody. No one is free until we all are free. And there is no freedom in America until white supremacy is dismantled. In Florida. Now you gotta deal with your civil liberties being violated. Now you gotta deal with businesses.
I need y'all to hear me and hear me good, because every time I say things like this, I feel like a lot of Hispanic or Latino people, they're taking offense from the messenger, because, you know, it's a lot of anti-blackness in your community. That's just called a thing. And so when I say certain things, you hear it through the lens of that anti-blackness. Or if you are a conservative or a Republican, you hear it through that lens. But I need you guys, as a former Republican conservative myself, I need you guys to process what I'm about to say. Open your ears and listen, because I am an analyst by trade. Like, literally, I've been doing this for years. I actually do it for fun. When I was a teenager, I was doing surveys, interviews, I was processing data, I was asking the questions. This is not new to me. What is that? I'm not new to this, I'm true to this. Hear me when I say, when President Obama, and I know that's a trigger for a lot of you guys, listen. When President Obama was running against Mitt Romney, a lot of my friends' children were going to school, because I'm from Alabama, with supremacist children, and they were gloating that when Mitt Romney won, he was going to put us back in slavery. It was not even close. The election was not even close. Hear what I'm about to say next. When Trump started telling supremacists that he was going to build a wall. This is America, like North America is America. But he was going to build a wall to keep out illegal immigrants, but didn't say anything about the ones at the top. Are coming from the top, I should say.
I finally found the solution for my disgusting athlete's foot. I've tried so many home remedies and over-the-counter treatments.
Anything about the ones at the top. Are coming from the top, I should say. He won. Supremacists are okay with black people being here. They brought us here. They brought us here. They were never expected for you guys to come. I never forget when Black Panther, the first one, came out. Now that's another trigger. So hold on. Came out. I was expecting to see so many white supremacist think pieces about, well, just go back to Africa, go build your Wakanda. The only article I saw saying anything of the sort was that supremacists should go and find some land and build their own Wakanda. Trump didn't win until he started talking about building a wall. Always remember that. They don't care. They used to us. They just want us to stay on our side of the town. Us moving to their neighborhoods, no. But across the train tracks, they're fine. It's you they don't want.
Happens when you buy into white supremacy. I always said it, and I'll say it again.
Please, please, please watch that video. It is literally everything I've been saying forever, but out of the mouth of that man. Like, it's literally, it's so refreshing to hear everything I've literally been saying word for word out of someone else's mouth. Because, man, is it so tricky living on this planet, being this smart, and being able to literally pinpoint it down to exactly what he said, but no one else in the country understands this. It's like living in the Twilight Zone right now. And you know what? I'm not even mad, because honestly, it's going to be well received a lot more because of, you know. So I'm glad somebody else said it, because it's tiring being the only person seeing things this way, being like, is everybody else, like, drinking the Kool-Aid, or what's going on?
Under white supremacy, I always said it, and I'll say it again. You fuck yourself.
You know, sometimes we think we're smarter than people of the past, but if It's all been said before, baby. We need to hear it, but it's all been said before. Meet this handsome racist little devil, Hinton Rowan Helper. In 1850 some odd, that man wrote a book entitled The Impending Crisis of the South, which detailed how, because the South was so invested in slavery, they had made some pretty wild mistakes. That included empowering an aristocracy that was fascistic and didn't care about anybody, and refusing to invest in any public infrastructure like education or parks or factories because, oh no, the blacks might get it. And there are countless other examples, but yeah, we often say like, well, how could people have known better back then? People did know better back then. You should know better now.
Happens when you buy into white supremacy. I always said it and I'll say it again. You fuck your...
This is what happens when you mix religion/spirituality in with politics. And people wonder why Jesus did what he did. If you were a Bible person, Jesus did what he did in the temple when he saw the people handling business inside the temple, knowing that the temple was supposed to be as of reverence for his father. So this is why I always tell people, gain knowledge of what you're doing inside the church as well as outside of the church as well. Because when you don't know the knowledge of what's going on and you agree to something, you fuck yourself. And once you do that, sometimes it's hard to unfuck yourself.
The majority of you people voted for white supremacy. That's the fucking problem.
Go watch that entire video. POCs, especially POCs who tend to align themselves thinking that they're white adjacent, so they align with white supremacy thinking that their adjacency will somehow protect them, and it won't. White supremacy does not protect anyone. It doesn't protect white women. It does not protect poor white men. The only people that white supremacy protects is rich white people. And if you're not a rich white person, if you're not a rich white man and you're continuing to vote for white supremacy hoping that it will somehow guard you and protect you, you are wrong. The only thing that you're doing is voting against your own rights and your freedoms.
And all that shit why I got elected. No, 68% of Cubans voted for...
You know this is about to be spicy. Sir, I think that you are a racist. Because the way that you keep saying, them people, you people, that group of people, it makes it seem like they are separate from you when you yourself said you're half Cuban. But check this out, because I'm all the way Cuban. It's crazy, I know. And if you look at my page, you'll see that I am very, very, very liberal. And my children are too, and we do exercise our right to vote. And you know what? We did not vote for Ron DeSantis, because fuck him. Genuinely, like. But, you know, I feel like the way that your speech is, you feel separate and other from the Latino X community when you're half Cuban.
The Cubans voted for DeSantis. 58% of Puerto Ricans, 53%.
Dixon gives some good stats here, but the thing I want to point out is that every single law, every single thing that is happening is anti-black, and it's always been anti-black. When we move this conversation off of the terminology around white supremacy and systemic racism, and we move it into the individual attitudes, actions, and behaviors that are anti-black, I think it's going to help people better understand how it works in their individual lives. One of the reasons that white people have such a hard time understanding systemic racism is because they don't see themselves as part of a system. White people get to operate as individuals, and they get to look at black people as some sort of, collective group. Well, that is because our society is built on anti-blackness and was built on one group, a group of black people being slaves, and a group of other people, white people, being the ones who are the enslavers. Now, of course, everybody couldn't own slaves, so the rest of those people end up being overseers, who now are police or politicians, right? Or they became observers. That's all these white people and
brown people and other non-black and non-white people just sitting around doing nothing. So I just want to point to the fact that when we move the conversation away from the terminology of systemic racism and white supremacy and we move it on to helping people understand the individual actions, attitudes, and behaviors and beliefs associated with anti-blackness, then people will be able to see a way forward. Then people will have a better comprehension of how what they do and how they were raised and how they were brought up, how all of those things are anti-black. And when they can see how their individual actions contribute to benefiting from overall systems of oppression, then I believe we have a much better chance of advancing the conversation towards a way that's going to be more effective. One of the reasons that I wrote the book Dump DEI is so that we can get the conversation moved into a language that is going to be much able to be permeated through our society in a way that people can really understand what anti-blackness is. And yeah, I said understand because people need to get this knowledge internally, because understanding is taking what's fed to you and then understanding what somebody else is telling you. People need to understand how anti-blackness shows up in themselves so that then they can work on the parts of themselves that are so traumatized and unhealed that's forcing them into continuing anti-blackness.
Voted for DeSantis. 58% of Puerto Ricans, 53% of all. So I'm going to need y'all to go back and watch that video because it's a mouthful. Now, nothing that he said in that video was false, okay? I am a poll worker in Essex County, New Jersey. And when I say the amount of Latinx, Hispanic people who came in to vote, low-key, you're not supposed to see the votes, but when you have to help them, it's like you can't help but see it. When I tell you the amount of them who voted Republican for everything, it was like, are you serious? Did y'all not see that Republicans is trying to kick y'all out the country?
And I'm going to stop it right there. So, yeah, so they believe that they're going to be the second part. Like I said, it's a chain reaction. So you slide up on the second main category of the majority of the people in the population of the world, that they get some chipped off privileges and kick some blacks out and down. And so that's what that is. So you got some people with that mindset. Not all, but some that got that mindset. And they're not the only one. It's not just them. You got some East Asians is like that. You got some Arabs are like that. You got some other people like that. You can get some immigrants that come from the continent are like that. Yeah, they come over and been here in America for a while. That think that, and everybody rises against it. That they're not going to be part of it. But if we be subjugated, you're going to be the next group going to be subjugated. And if you go out to the same places where you are against the black American, go in them same spots. Go in them same areas and buy a house in Wyoming. Go in them same spots where they is in Missouri. Go in them same spots. America's good, or you're going to have to find out. You're going to find out. And be in them little towns like what I just showed you, where it's 98% white, you think that some people are good out there, but you got that segment that's going to let you know. They're going to let you know. We're trying to tell you. But okay, but I know we're the lower class as a collective in this country, been here for over 400 some years, and you believed it. And so, and like I said, you don't understand white supremacy. You really don't. And somebody that is in America don't be, and I'm not talking about my immigrants over in their native country. You don't know about this. I'm talking about the ones that's here. You don't know this. Some of you don't even know. This is what we try to tell you. But you say, yeah, as long as I stay away from it and smile up to them. But it's cool. You'll see. That's and what he said is facts. It's facts. See? But you can go out there with them in the predominantly white states. Go ahead. Go ahead and get away from the American blacks. The ones they told you criminalize they're uneducated, they're animals. Well, why aren't you going out there? Just going out there in them states along with them other people. And let us be and make our productive society. If you can't see them as equal. That's my question. That's my answer to that's my solution to that. For those people, not only it's not just for white people, but for some of the white people who feel like I gotta be so politically incorrect. Oh, they say I'm being racist. Okay, here's the solution for that. You don't want to see another black person like Scott? Go out them towns, the states I just showed you, and live out there. Don't worry about it. You can vent all the frustration you want, and you'll find somebody out there who's gonna agree with you. Not everybody, maybe not everybody, but somebody gonna agree with you out there, because that's why some of them move out there. That's why some of them move out there, and there are companies out there too that work out there. Yeah, predominantly white, so white people can be white. Tech, IT companies, everything, hospitals, they're out there in the state, built up. So there you go. But when it came to the portion of black people, and if I was a black American, I wouldn't go out in them states being the only one, like Phil said, because that's telling a lot. Because you might come across some people, so you don't have to deal with the Karens and so all the Karens and don't want to be accused of being racist and things like that. There you go. You won't have to be accused of being racist. Not between that one, there's states out there. It's still predominantly white. That's the solution right there. You can be white. You can have your political views. You'll have to see the people that look like myself and darker, who've been in this country. You got options to move to another country, and those people who come into this country with that mindset got a chance to move to them same places. Just leave us black Americans alone if we destitute, and just view us on TV like you do or on the music. But that's what I'm saying, and this is for my people this is for the people that's in the closet with it. That got the when they see a black person, they just they get angry. That disgusts me. Well, okay, go on out there. Go on out there. Trust me. You hate us. You can't stand us. You can't stand to be around people that look like us. You think we uneducated and criminal minded. Just something about you. And you have this supremacist mindset. Well, you might got some people out there might join up with you. See, that's the problem. You don't have to complain about it. Just desegregate yourself. Move out there. And it's free. It's diversity, right? We in the country full of diversity. You got to be around people you don't want to be around. So why burden yourself? I mean, hey, you can be all... you don't necessarily, but hell, you might meet somebody with some nationalist view. Or DeSantis could be out there. People like DeSantis. There are many people like him. They love them kind of places. That's why Trump did so good out there. And suddenly people came to Washington D.C. from all them all white towns. They was at the Capitol. They was in rules to come to that place. But that's okay. You don't have to live around us. We're saying you don't have to attack us. You ain't got to stop us. Put government sanctions like that one woman did. And I would warn black people, don't go out there. Don't want to go out there, whatever. Ain't nothing out there in the Wyoming and all them places. Ain't nothing out there but wilderness. Let them have it. Let them have it. Let them have the cold winters, extreme cold winters. That's what I say. I mean, you have a choice. What I'm saying is, you have a choice. You don't have to subjugate and be around people that don't, if they systematically, and you accuse of being politically prejudiced, and they always crying about race. They always crying. Okay, I can't stand them, and so you go out in Wyoming and be racist, and in New Hampshire someplace and be racist, and don't worry. And there's some people you might find a bit falling. Look what that guy what happened that strangled that black man on the subway. He got $2 million. That came from across the country. And there's some white people will help you. Don't worry about that. It's that politically woke stuff. Get away from liberals and whatever those liberal love black people minded people. You come out here and be conservative. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Come on out here. You can spread light crosses and have certain organizations out there. Don't worry. Black folks ain't coming out there. Trust me. And let us know when you do, so we'll know not to come out and patronize your business. And I'll tell black people why stop is not for you to understand. That's the way they want it. Well, it's America. Yes, diversity, divisive. So this racial conflict that you see all the time on social media, if we have the problem. And maybe to a certain degree we should segregate. I'm just saying, if the subconscious mindset bothers you so much, and you choose to being nepotism, favoritism to your own people, being cute, then let it be among your own people. If you want to be separate, and those you have the whole, you still are 80% of the population. You're still 80% of the population, people. And if you some of the people who are like that, I'm not saying every white person is like this. I'm saying the ones who subjectively, why I'm always being accused of being racist. I'm white, and I just, I don't. Okay, here's the solution. Move to a state. Stay away from them. Don't worry, you're not gonna see that many blacks. They're not gonna go to school with you. It can look like what it used to be on TV, where it looked like Andy Griffin or whatever. Those towns, some of them shows. It could look like the Waltons or some crap. This town still like that. There was the good old days in America. Now we got all these other cultures and everything. Why we have all these other cultures, like the people like Richard Dreyfuss? Don't worry about that. You still got states out there still like that. You might see one of us tricking out there once in a while, but not many of us gonna come through those states out there. That's a fact. Unless somebody that have some self exploration. But don't worry, the blacks ain't. Some blacks got the message. When they saw them Klan and white nationalists and skinheads out there, you still go out there in them predominantly white states. You're a fool. You're a fool. I ain't going no Idaho, no Montana. I don't care. No, I don't care what job, whatever. No. Let them have it. That's white man country. Let them have it. So they can be who they sell. Let them be happy. Let them enjoy their wild buffalo and wilderness out there with the natives. Be cool. Just leave black people, just leave us alone. That's all. Stop micromanaging us. That's all what we want. We'll work it out. We might got some issues among each other, but we can work it out. But I feel this way. It's like that'd be only the solution. Like that with that one video. You don't have to put laws, and I said, like I said, to my black people, I would go into predominantly white places. They had it for a reason. And your kids don't have to be subjugated to that. Why your hair is a certain way, you too dark, be calling you an animal and all that stuff like that. Let them be like that out there. Let them be. You don't worry. You always have your Viking nomadic roots out there, or whatever roots of any other nationality. You can don't worry. It won't be black out there. We won't blend in with you. And for them ones that subconsciously think like that, I'm hitting them too, because that's why you prejudice. You see this dark, melanated, kinky haired person. You don't have to worry about that. Go on out there. Every nomadic, white is white. White is mayonnaise. But anyway, let me get out this top. But anyway, yeah. So you have it. Remember, you have a choice. You want to live around other nationality and races, and for those people who can't stand Black Americans, they might welcome you out there. Cause look, it ain't gonna be. You want to, what the media program you. You won't have to interact or feel criminalized, and those who you do, and those who think conservative, Republican, you gotta even have some white Latinos was being skinheads. Well, there you go. You can join your brothers up there with through the Nazism in those places. There's a solution. You don't have to live around this. You don't have to harm us. You don't have to be no race riot. Just stay in your neck of the woods. And some people like Scott, there you go. Stay. He probably out there in New Hampshire somewhere. Don't worry, Scott. People like Scott, don't worry. You don't have to be apologizing. You don't have to have black people no more. You ain't got to see black people no more. Don't want to live. Don't even see. Don't be an extinction in your high eyesight. There's states out there. You can be isolated by people that surround you, people that look like you. No matter what their sexual orientation, just no matter what that is, they look just like you. There's nobody out there to call them racist. They can be just like you. Just remember that. It's just like you. Don't worry. But hey, you have to make up special laws. And it's like I said, I would advise my fellow Black Americans, don't go out in them 90% of them states. Let them have it. Let them have it. You move into the area where it's your own people. You be comfortable in your own dark skin and whatever culture, But hey, you don't have to mock us no more. You can't stand this, stay away from us. And I showed you a solution. So I hope you take a bit of this. And if you want to in the closet racist people who are white, just happen to be white or other people, you have other states to go to. You don't have to be bothered with people no more. And you can just view it from your computer or your TV. Alright then, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been edifying. But this is for my people who are subconsciously racist and directly racist. This is just for you. Alright then, take care.